bought this property, it had an old citrus orchard on it, and so we basically cleaned it up, extended an old shed into a packing shed, planted more trees, set up irrigation. We had a 100-acre irrigation licence from Waterpark Creek, and we attempted to be like dinky-die farmers, dinky-die fruit growers. And for a number of years we worked flat out every day and earned enough to feed ourselves, send the kids to school, all that sort of stuff. Well, the landscape and the creek in particular gave me lots of material to create my, well, little paradises, idyllic sort of pictures, I suppose, featuring the swimming in the creek and the paperbark trees, the palm trees, the wildlife, the wild pigs, all those things featured in the work, as well as, of course, the agricultural stuff like the orchard and growing things as well. So it was just tons of material to work with, and it was quite a productive time for me artistically, even though I still had to keep my day job, which was growing fruit. Once you start getting heat stroke regularly, it's time to reconsider what you're doing or where you're living. I think that was one of the factors that made us decide eventually to move to a cooler climate, was the heat stroke was starting to become a bit too regular, and it was very frustrating not being able to carry out the physical jobs that were necessary on a farm. I was still, well, sucked in by farming, thinking it was, you know, an honourable occupation, growing food to feed people. I would have been better doing my art and not worrying about honour at all. Making things for my own pleasure and maybe for the pleasure of others, hopefully. I like the balance between painting and sculpture. They're a bit different. You know, like, say you get a bit of variety that way. I mean, if you can't just sort of sit all day and just do very miniature painting. You know, you've got to get out and get a bit of air in your lungs and move about, otherwise you end up with swollen ankles and blood clots in your legs and things like that. And I also like to keep moving on too. I don't like the idea of when you're on a good thing, stick to it, because that means you're just repeating yourself. You know, and that's all a bit ho-hum. It's like, well, you know, we need some more money, let's bang out a few more, you know, of the same old thing. Well, it's not the way I would look at it. Each one has to be, you know, a new game. You know, a new game, a new venture, if you know what I mean. It may work, it may not work, but you give it a go, and then when you've done the best you can in that, you move on to the next thing. When it comes to maps, they were essential when I worked in this prospecting party, because my job was to walk behind the geologist with a pack and carry all the samples that he collected with his geologist's pick wherever he walked. And we relied on maps and aerial photographs to know where we were going. I found that the best way I could do painting of an area or of especially like an island, was to actually walk all over it, and that way I seemed to have a good idea of how it was. I don't know why, but that seems to work the best, is to walk all over it. Not necessarily recording everything, but just, you know, walking and wandering and daydreaming and looking, and then later on my own, in a caravan, in a tent, or in a studio with all my little bits and pieces of sketches and that I've done, I start to then put it all together into one big image. I think I'm probably a bit of a frustrated scientist, but I was too mentally lazy to learn how to understand mathematics and the other subjects that would be needed to be a scientist. So I'm just a bit of a science voyeur, I would say, rather than being a proper scientist who has to apply himself. But at least I find everything interesting, whether it's biology or astronomy, geology, all of those things are fascinating, and we're all still learning, I believe. Also, it can sometimes be useful when I'm doing my painting or sculpture, because some of my speculations can be turned into artwork. I know it sounds a bit silly, but I'd rather produce a magnificent failure than a piss-weak success, if you pardon the language. It's easy to do an easy picture or easy sculpture, but again, it's not as interesting, like, for me. I'm not a factory. I'm not producing identical things all the time. I'm trying to tease out something different each time, and it gets harder and harder. It doesn't get any easier as you get older. It gets harder. And of course, when I'm doing a painting, you use whatever you can to make your picture work and make it interesting. And so, if there's a bit of blank sky and it looks a bit dull, you can always whack an aircraft in to make it, so that the eye will travel around the picture and enjoy the picture better. So it is a bit of a device. It's not an obsession or anything like that. It's still all a device to make the picture work as it should, really. First and foremost, I want to come up with a painting, and something will interest me. It might be a story, it might be a memory, or it might be something I've seen, and from that I then make the picture. So really, again, the stories and what I've seen and my memories are all just devices so that I can make a picture, similar to a person using sound to create a song or create music. It's just you're using different sounds to create something that makes you feel good and makes other people feel good. And I'm trying to do the same with shapes and colours, and so I use whatever I can to make it work. It's just important that it works for me, and the idea is that when people look at my work, it makes them feel good. So but the main pleasure I get is in the making of it, and if I don't do some painting or sculpture for a period of time, I actually don't feel very well at all. I just feel edgy, sort of not that happy with myself. But once I'm in my workshop, I'm happy.